Jujutsu Kaisen is a story that subverts the typical shonen tropes and adds its own twists onto them. I've mentioned this throughout so many of my videos, but let's go and dig a little deeper with this video. Now, I know there's like a million shonen tropes that we can use, but just for the sake of this video, I'll keep it old school and just do 5. Those of you who used to watch my top 5 list videos know how much I love going into detail in those lists. So this should be good for you old school members of the Shaman tribe. And just before we dig deep into this list, I just want to point out that all of the subversions made by Jujutsu Kaisen on the shonen tropes is my own interpretation on how I think Jujutsu Kaisen subverted those tropes. You may not agree with these opinions, but these are my takes on the tropes. Now, having said that, let's start off with number 1. Number 1, the power of friendship. Yep. Let's start off with probably the most well-known and arguably the most hated trope in all of shonen anime. Power of friendship is the typical last-minute nakama power-up that would typically bail out the heroes when they're in danger. I think the anime that gets the most hate for this trope is Fairy Tail. We have seen Urza and Natsu get powered up and carried on fighting thanks to the love of their friends. There was literally a scene where the strongest Fairy Tail members were in an island. It was the Tenryujima Island where Natsu and a few others had to pass a few tests to be ranked an S-class mage. Long story short, the final boss of the series, who was in his dragon form named Acnologia, launched an island-destroying attack on Fairy Tail. But with the help from Mavis, all of the characters were in a circle and were holding hands. And I know Mavis used one of Fairy Tail's strongest defense spells, but the fact that they're all holding hands and were in a circle, that to me symbolized how our friendship will protect us even from the strongest creature in the world. So with this example, you can get the idea of a friendship power-up and how it saves the main heroes of a series. Now, the example I'm going to use with Jujutsu Kaisen, I feel like I'm beating 2 shonen tropes in one, and that is that the good guys in Jujutsu Kaisen, like your Yujis, Nobaras, Hanamis, Makis, etc., they are all friends, yes. But instead of digging deep and fighting for each other, these lot would rather fight with each other together and gang up against the cursed spirits. We see it constantly. Yuji and Nanami teaming up against Mahito, Yuji and Todo teaming up against Hanami, with Gojo, the strongest character in the verse at that time, jumping in and delivering his deadly Hollow Purple, which was like a finishing move if any of the cursed spirits got attacked by it. The other shonen tropes this beats is the typical hero and villain fighting 1v1, which I never understood, to be honest, but I guess it's all about honor and all that stuff. But yeah, having the heroes team up and give each other advice whilst they're fighting is a lot more realistic and you can actually relate to. Having the characters use the power of friendship to get stronger or protect themselves sometimes doesn't make any sense and defies logic. But having characters fight with each other and supporting one another makes the friendship between these characters more meaningful. Like Todo giving Yuji a pep talk whilst they're both fighting Mahito. They're at war against the cursed spirits, and having characters motivate each other brings that element of realism as well as showing the deep friendship for one another, as they don't want to see each other die in the battlefield. But it's not just motivation. Yuji learned how to use Black Flash properly thanks to Todo when they were both fighting against Hanami. So it works both ways. You have the motivation factor as well as them learning and training on the go when they're all fighting together. Number 2, the power of dreams and the main character's end goal to be the strongest. That's a mouthful there, but this is another shonen trope we have seen. We have seen it in Black Clover, where Asta wants to become the Wizard King, Luffy wants to be the Pirate King, Naruto wants to become Hokage. It's a dream that leads to a goal where you want to achieve something great. Well, in Jujutsu Kaisen, our main character's goal is to die. He doesn't want to die like how his granddad died in the first episode, where he died all alone with no one near him. Yuji wants to die surrounded by his friends, which was reiterated by his granddad as well, for him to die surrounded by his friends. This was a shocker of a goal, especially from a shonen title, but in a way you can see the positive message within this goal. Him dying surrounded by his friends means he didn't die alone, and it shows that Yuji had friends to begin with. The other positive meaning as well, in my interpretation for this goal, is that him dying surrounded by his friends is the fulfillment he wants at the end when he does die. Meaning he wants a life that he thought he lived to its fullest, and it was a meaningful life. Which is why we see Yuji having a hero complex and trying to save as many people as he can. So that eventually when he does look back and say he did what he can, he saved many people, which is also what his granddad wanted him to do. So in face value, having your character already planning the end of his life can seem dark, but in reality, I believe Yuji wants a life of fulfillment and achievement before his death. His granddad told him in his dying breath that he should protect people because he is so strong. So if he were to die, and say if he does end up defeating Sukuna but dies in the process, that I would say is him having a good death because he killed the strongest being that has ever lived in Sukuna, and now everyone can be safe from his tyranny. He can rest in peace now. I might be looking too much into it, but this is my interpretation of Yuji's goal. Number 3, the mentor figure. I mentioned this trope so many times in my videos, so I had to mention it here as well. The typical mentor figures in shonen are the old men past their prime, like a Silver's Rayleigh, Jiraiya, Master Roshi, etc. You can name so many. In One Piece alone, you can make a whole list of old men mentor figures. Whitebeard was a mentor figure for Ace. Garp was a mentor figure for Kobe, and although he's not as old as Garp or Whitebeard, you can make the case for Dragon being a mentor figure for Sabo. But in Jujutsu Kaisen, it isn't the old men who are the mentor figures. Far from it. It's the guys that are still in their 20s, who are in their peak, that are still the mentor figures. Gojo and Hanami are the mentor figures for the students for Jujutsu High in Tokyo. I don't know about you guys, but I love seeing mentor figures that are still young and are in their prime, rather than the old wise men who have the knowledge but are past their peak. The old men mentor figures is like a cheat code for our heroes because they usually have all the answers to all of life's problems, whereas with the younger mentors like a Gojo for instance, we have seen him fail. He failed twice, once in stopping Kenjaku activating the culling games, and the second in failing to defeat Sukuna when he returned. Hanami couldn't defeat Mahito and died as a result, so he failed his students there. These guys are old enough to be wise and pass on their knowledge to their students, but are still young enough to make mistakes and not have all the answers. There was a vulnerability with the younger mentors, whereas with the older mentors, it feels like there's an air of invincibility about them. Like Makuro from Fairy Tail. This guy was the mentor for the entire guild. He should have died countless times, but he hasn't. When Silver's Rayleigh revealed himself in Shapode Archipelago, Garp says that the Navy should forget about fighting Rayleigh because the Navy won't be able to handle fighting the Whitebeard pirates and Rayleigh at the same time. You can't fight off against two legends, that is what he said. This is what I mean, the older mentor past his prime would still be one of the strongest characters in the entire verse. Look at Dumbledore from Harry Potter. This guy went 1v1 against Voldemort, and according to some fans, he was taking it easy because Harry was there in that scene. So not only do they all have the answers, but they're in the top 5 strongest characters in their verse easily. And I'm being generous putting them in the top 5. Whitebeard, even at his old age, was still considered the strongest man in the world. And him as a pirate, he had the highest bounty in the world. So this is what I mean. The old men mentor figures, they're untouchable. And you can't really relate to them, but seeing younger mentor figures who also train their students using weird techniques like Gojo having Yuji trained by watching movies, it beats the typical training montage and it gives a different spin on the way the students should be training. It's different from the same old we have seen for however long we have been watching anime and other forms of media. So for me, having younger mentor figures in an anime will always be a good thing and something I actually prefer over having these invincible old men mentor figures. Number 4, the rival to our hero. Having an obligatory rival character in a shonen anime is one of shonen's best traits. Not a tiresome cliche, this common trope nearly always energizes the narrative by giving the hero someone to compete with, and that usually brings out the best in both characters. Healthy competition can motivate and inspire any shonen hero, and their rival may become a teammate or a best friend. Over the years, we have seen guys like Goku and Vegeta, or Tyson and Kai, or Yugi and Kaiba, Naruto and Sasuke. So many over the years, but for me, and rest in peace Akira Toriyama, you are the original GOAT and sensei of shonen anime. But the blueprint, the rival trope, is Goku and Vegeta. They were bitter enemies with Vegeta looking down on Goku, calling him a low-class Saiyan, but by Dragon Ball Super, they're more or less best friends. We see both of them training together in the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie, so a lot of the time, Goku and Vegeta are spending time together training and getting stronger. They both reached Super Saiyan Blue at the same time together. Contrast that to before in Dragon Ball Z, where Vegeta hated Goku and couldn't come close to his power when he saw him as a rival. Goku became Super Saiyan before Vegeta. When Goku returned in the Buu Saga, Vegeta had to use Babidi to power himself up to fight against Goku. but the whole time Goku already had Super Saiyan 3 in his locker. So even in that fight, Goku was always ahead of Vegeta. It's only when Vegeta accepts that Goku is the best, when Goku was fighting off against Kid Buu, and now with the story going into Dragon Ball Super, that is when Vegeta actually catched up and was on the same power level as Goku, as they both can now go Super Saiyan God and Super Saiyan Blue, along with future forms in Ultra Instinct and Alter Egos as well. So the formula is bitter rival that turns into a teammate slash best friend. But for Jujutsu Kaisen, I think this is the other way round. Look at the Gojo past arc. Gojo and Geto were the two strongest sorcerers, so you would assume that these two characters would have a friendly rivalry, but no, they didn't. They both acknowledged each other as the strongest and kept each other's back. But then when Geto started to lose his way and was becoming more evil, check out my Tragedy of Geto video if you want a deep dive on Geto's downfall. But when he became evil, he then saw Gojo as a rival, especially when he saw his strength. Are you the strongest because you are Gojo Satoru, or are you Gojo Satoru because you are the strongest? This is clear jealousy and envy from Geto's part, seeing how much stronger Gojo has become. So for them, they went from being best friends, never having any undercover rivalry, to then becoming bitter rivals, which resulted in Gojo killing Geto in Jujutsu Kaisen 0. So it's like a reverse on the shonen rivalry trope. And we're seeing it happen again with Yuji and Megumi. Now, it's early days still, but Yuji and Megumi were best friends and never looked at each other as rivals. But now, as we are seeing Megumi follow a similar path to Geto, will he end up being another best friend turned arch enemy in the final arc of Jujutsu Kaisen? It remains to be seen, but I wouldn't be surprised if this were to happen. Number 5, the rising underdog. There are many vital reasons for any fictional hero to be an underdog who slowly but surely gets stronger and smarter over time. Shonen anime makes heavy use of the scrappier underdog for several reasons, such as giving the hero much needed room for growth, mentally and physically. Also, shonen anime series are geared towards younger viewers who have limited skills and experience while having everything to prove. Younger shonen fans may be empowered when they watch protagonists like a Tanjiro, Naruto and Ichigo who work hard to go from zero to hero, and as much as you can say Yuji might be a rising underdog, he actually isn't. This guy was gifted with God-given strength from the first episode. He was breaking records. People were comparing him to Mirko Crocop. His own granddad was telling him to protect others because he has the strength to protect people. He equaled the record of consecutive Black Flash attacks after just learning it recently. So the guy is talented from the start. And I like this because it gives a perspective on the pressure and expectation of someone being that talented. You have a duty to protect people because you are so strong. So how will you live up to those expectations set by your own granddad? That is the journey we are seeing with Yuji, and what makes it even better is that Yuji is a humble character. He doesn't brag or show off how strong he is to other characters. I think this is what makes his character so likable. You have a character that is naturally good at everything, and yet his main goal in life is to help people. I think that's the message Akutami wanted to give the shonen audience, is that to always be grounded even if you are a special talent, which may not be the same message as working hard to get to where you want to get to, but it's not like Yuji doesn't suffer in his own series. Even someone as gifted as Yuji loses so often in his own story. So not only is Yuji a humble, grounded character by default, the story itself keeps punishing him, making sure he never becomes arrogant enough to not work hard. That's my take anyway from this trope, but I want to now go over to you guys. What other tropes has Jujutsu Kaisen subverted? I know there's plenty more, so please comment below the ones that I have missed. And as your tribal chief always says, don't forget to subscribe to the Shaman Tribe.